Hello, I'm Simon Woodward, and for the last 35 years or so, I've worked as a professional in the field of heritage tourism and cultural tourism, both as a management consultant, also as a university lecturer and researcher. During that time, I've worked in many parts of the world, from Addis Ababa to Bethlehem, most recently in New Orleans, and even in my home city of Durham in the north of England here. So personally and professionally, I'm particularly interested in how different communities remember and celebrate their histories, and how they then share this past with visitors and with tourists. So heritage and culture can be really, really powerful tools in tourism development. And the way that our histories are presented says much about our values as a society. So the monuments and the buildings that we protect, the handicrafts that we might still practice, the food that we serve, the stories that we tell, and even the words we use when we tell those stories reflect not just what we as communities feel about the past and our past, but also demonstrate what we want to pass on to future generations. So one of the things I'm increasingly fascinated by and interested in is the role of travel writing and how that shapes people's perceptions of destinations. So as a tourist, we might read travel books about the place that we're going to visit before we go there. So these days, a formal guidebook such as this one, the Michelin Guide to Burgundy and Jura, is likely to sell probably fewer than 1,500 copies. And that, not least, is a reflection of the increasingly important role of the internet as a medium for sharing information about places. And indeed, customer review sites like TripAdvisor are basically taking over from those kinds of publications. But at the same time that the guidebook sector has fallen in terms of sales, there's been a massive increase in public interest in travel writing. And popular authors such as Bill Bryson, you can see a few of his up behind me here, Michael Palin, Jan Morris, they can sell hundreds of thousands of copies of some of their books. So it's completely different magnitude compared to the traditional guidebook. But the more I've got into travel writing, and this is kind of my collection behind me here, more questions I've started to ask myself. So why is almost every list of top travel writing dominated by white male writers, people who essentially look like me? Where are the voices of women? And where are the voices of writers of colour? So authors like Manisha Rajesh, who's this brilliant 2012 book about crossing India by train, is both hilarious and tragic at the same time. Or you've got No Saraviva's book about returning to her home country of Nigeria and exploring it partly from the perspective of an outsider, because she spent much of her time being brought up in Europe. Why are those kinds of books still relatively few and far between? Something else that worries me a little bit is how accurate, how reliable are some of these travellers' accounts. So two books that appear on almost every published list of top travel writing are these two. Patrick Leigh Fermore's Time of Gifts and Laurie Lee's, one of my favourites, As I Walked Out One Midsummer Morning. But both of them were written and published at least 4 decades after the journeys that they recount. So how reliable are those authors' memories? Should we take at face value all those conversations that are reported in these books as having, as verbatim? Paul Theroux, who, again, the very famous American travel writer, noted in his book, The Deep South, that we really should question writers' understandings of destinations, particularly when they just pass through them for a few hours. And he asks, can anybody really gain a full insight into a place if they are literally just passing through? So that raises another question for me. Should we be focusing on descriptions of the act of travelling and the experiences that happen along the way rather than the descriptions of places? Is that what is more important? And in fact, Paul Theroux specifically says the quest, the getting there, the difficulty of the road is the story. The journey, not the arrival, matters. So, I'd like you to join me on a wander around the shelves of my study as I look in more detail at the art of travel writing and try to decipher what these books tell us about the places that we visit.